Welcome to the GCN Tech Clinic, where we aim to answer your bike tech and maintenance related questions. As ever, you can submit your questions down below in the comment section using the hashtag askgcntech, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible within the allotted time. This week it's Connor and I.
There we go. Right, let's kick things off with this one sent in by Lata. Hashtag askgcntech. I kicked off my indoor training session and noticed that when I'm putting out power, I tend to push forward on the handlebars of my hands. This creates notable tension between the contact points of my hands and the saddle. Is this a good thing, or does it suggest that I need to reevaluate my bike fit or riding position?
I think there's a core strength thing here, and it's also just sort of a technique thing. One of the things that is a sort of practice that people have said to me in the past is that's wasted energy. Like if you're like gripping hard on the bars, that's like energy that you could be using to like push down on the pedals. And so you can do this little technique thing where you, I've hurt my wrist, by the way, in case people are wondering. It's all right. Anyway, but you can, probably been grabbing the bars too hard, but you can imagine that you're sort of like playing, like loosen your fingers off, like play the piano. So just sort of have your hands resting on the bars and just be like, just keep it loose.
Yeah. I also think there's like...
Sometimes you have to pull up on the bars.
I'd be interested to know if you're getting this on the road and you're are you just getting this on the indoor trainer? Because it could be something really simple, like the fact that you haven't quite set your indoor trainer up right. Maybe you're like, your front wheel is a bit lower than the back wheel.
It's good if your weight's being pushed forward and so maybe lift up your front wheel a bit more.
Yeah, like even lift it up more than the back wheel is if you're on like a really low gradient climb, because like, imagine you're on a descent, you're just trying to ride a descent for your entire ride, it would actually put quite a lot of pressure on your hands and you start to feel that. So yeah, just be aware of that. Maybe like a few books on your front wheel, raise things up a bit.
Great shout.
Could be an easy fix.
Next question is from Noob Cyclist, who says, are gravel superbikes faster or better than an entry or mid-tier bike on the road? So if we assume that it's got the same tyre, if it's got like gravel tyres on it, versus a mid-tier road bike with road tyres, that's the key really. I think like, the thing is with a lot of mid-tier road bikes, they are the same shape and the group set is the same shape. It's just a bit heavier. Yeah. Or the carbon layup's not quite as good. But fundamentally, the most important thing is the shape because of the aerodynamics and stuff. So fundamentally, like, road tyres are going to be faster, the aero is going to be superior, it's going to be quicker on the road.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Yeah. I think it'd be interesting though when you compare it with like the same tyres on, that would be interesting. I'm not sure I know the answer to that.
But it's going to be slightly less aero, and the weight, like a top-end gravel superbike is going to always be heavier than a top-end road bike. I still think it's probably still going to be a bit heavier than in most cases, than a mid-tier road bike. Yeah,
I guess it depends what you define as gravel these days, because it's always evolving.
Yeah. Next question is from GTWO Manila, who says, hey, hello, Ollie and Alan. I live in a tropical climate and use two types of lubes, drip wax for summer and oil-based lubes for the rainy season. I usually degrease the chain every time I switch bikes. Should I have two separate chains instead? One for drip on wax, one for oil-based lube. Should I continue to use one chain and degrease it thoroughly before switching lubes? Thank you.
I think you don't need to have two different chains.
Do you not?
I would, well, I know you're probably going to counter it. If this was me, I'd be fine with degreasing the chain and using a different lubrication method.
I think it depends on how much you ride. If you're riding a lot, I really think that there is, and when I say a lot, I mean like more than 5 hours a week. I think there's a definite argument for just having, I mean, I have two chains usually for each bike I use.
Do you?
And I just have them on rotation.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like once gets really dirty, and if I'm waxing them as well, I just clip them off and then put the other one on and redo it that way. And I find that, it's kind of different. In the past, people just used the chain and then replaced it when it was worn, but I tend to just rotate chains.
Okay, interesting.
And it's good as well because it means like, it's good like if you've got a big event that you're planning or a really important ride, and it means you can have a nice clean chain that's waxed or something and ready to go that you just pop on.
Yeah, fair shout. Yeah. Fair shout.
Bill in Houston says, the Silca Calculator can very easily give me an optimum pressure in excess of the ratings of hookless rims. They should be banned.
Yeah, I think I find the Silca Calculator so useful. It's a really good tool, but you also need to apply it to your own situation too. Like, you need to use that as a tool and not take it as gospel.
Well, I think it does highlight a weakness of hookless rims, which is that if you are, like for me, I'm within the realms of what the Silca Calculator would recommend based on my body weight. But when you start getting bigger riders, the pressure starts to move out of the range often, so it'll suggest a pressure that's higher than what hookless would ideally have you at. So the solution then becomes run wider tyres, and then you can run the lower pressure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. You're right. I don't think they need to be banned. I just think you need to be aware of the limitations. It's quite useful that it points that out to you.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Next one from Mr. Poodler.
Yeah, who says, this is a serious question. I struggle to find any bib shorts or tights that don't show the outline of my manhood clearly. This isn't about the size of mine or anyone else's pecker, but I genuinely have to wear baggy shorts over the top because it doesn't seem right to walk into a coffee shop mid-ride while Dorothy's tucking into her scone and I walk past her at eye height with a clear outline of my bits on show. Is there a solution to this, or any make of bib tight that hides these areas better? Or is wearing baggy sports shorts over the top the best option? Thanks in advance.
Dorothy got more than she bargained for.
Yeah. Connor, you're a big lad. What's your advice?
I don't know.
You've been riding a long time?
I think yeah.
You've walked past a lot of Dorothys in your time?
Okay, look, this is my opinion on all this. Seriously.
Can't wait.
This is my opinion.
Can't wait for this.
So, when you go swimming, you go in those big lads in the Olympics. You see everything. You see everything. But it's all right in that context. It's on display. And it's swimming, no one bats an eyelid.
I feel
What's wrong with it?
Do you know what? I feel like 15 years ago, this was a thing that people were weirded out by, cycling shorts. I feel now people are like, yeah, whatever. And there are a few small-minded people who might still be like, oh, ridiculous cyclists, but they're just small-minded morons. I don't think people care.
Yeah.
I really don't think people care.
Honestly, I think more is on display when I wear my wetsuit than my bib tights, like my bib shorts.
Honestly, I think
it's fine.
I don't feel self-conscious or worried about it. You just get on with it.
Yeah.
You're used to it.
There's some specific bib shorts which might be a little bit more revealing, and I think you have to be careful of wearing old bib shorts.
White bib shorts, but they've got wet. Are definitely not what you want to be doing.
I think it's also a case of making sure your jersey fits correctly. If you're conscious of this, maybe getting a slightly longer, baggier jersey if you're riding a bit more casually and you're going to coffee shops, because that does cover more of that area, and also do what we call the banana check.
Do we call it that? I've never heard it called that.
I call it the banana check.
You call it that
because you can get into an awkward position and be a little bit more revealing.
I can't believe we're talking about
If it's pointing sideways, 3 or 6 o'clock, you're in trouble. Point at the 12. Point at the sky.
Right.
You pointed up. I pointed up. You have to point it up to the sky. Get it out of the way.
Oh dear.
Get it out of sight.
What have we got ourselves into?
Let's move on. You did ask.
I think just get on with it. People don't mind. It's all right.
Yeah.
I think it's in your head. Anyway. Next up, we have Scott C, who says, I have Shimano 105 Di2, and my question is about minimizing drop chains from big to small chainring. I maybe naively thought that drop chains would be super rare with Di2 versus mechanical. Assuming that I have the front derailleur set up correctly and my proper chain and proper chainrings aren't worn out, I still have the occasional drop chain. Should I expect with 105 Di2 to be able to apply any force at all on the pedals when downshifting? Does it matter which cog you're on? For instance, is it bad to shift the front derailleur when you're cross-chained? What do you think, Connor?
You shouldn't really need a chain catcher. I don't think in this situation.
I think that what he's written here, Scott, in this thing is, he goes, assuming that I have the front derailleur set up correctly. And I would say the most likely culprit is you don't.
I think it needs a bit of tweaking on the setup, and also, like you say, avoid cross-chaining. Like, even if it's set up perfectly and you're cross-chaining your change at the front, you're increasing the risk of dropping your chain.
Yeah, I think, there are extremes, and also you can drop your chain if you are cross-chaining and you back pedal. That often does drop the chain.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be doing that. And in terms of your question about shifting under load, like ideally, I wouldn't ever make a front shift ideally out the saddle because it's under more load. And you do have that knack of like trying to catch it almost like a clutch and just sort of like lifting off the force and just taking it round and then going again, which you kind of learn to develop that sort of skill. But having said that, the 105 DR2, having ridden it myself, it does actually shift really well under load, especially on the cassette at the back.
Yeah.
Like, it's really good. I wouldn't be expecting to be dropping chains like the frequency you're saying, so I think it is a setup issue. Right,
last question this week. This has been sent in by Pink as Pistol. The thing nobody seems to be saying about road tubes is that with typical pressures, they lose air pretty quickly. For optimal pressures to be very practical for all uses. I inflate the 25s in my daily commuter at 110 psi simply because I can rest assured that I can go on at least for 4 days without having to reinflate my tyres. When I reinflate, pressure's gone down to 80. I could put 90 psi in, all right, but the second or third day I'd be having a risk of a pinch flat or the rim bottoming out. That seems like quite a big drop in pressure for a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I've had like tubeless setups that actually retain air, although that's a bit hit and miss. Some tubeless setups I've had do leak air overnight, and they will say drop from 70 psi down to 60 psi overnight. But I do find ones where they don't, and they hold air really well. And I think with tubeless it's a bit more voodoo because it's sort of dependent on the tolerances of the rim tyre interface, and it can vary from the tolerances manufactured in on just one tyre to the next. Things like that. And there's all sorts of other things that can cause pressure drops. So it's like if your valve of your inner tube, like the valve core is not quite in right, or maybe it's just an old valve core and it's a bit leaky, and the seals in that valve core have gone a little bit. There's all sorts of little things like that. Or maybe there's a slight, ever so slight leak in your rim tape on the rim, and it's just a very slow leak. Like there's all sorts of little things like that.
I think that pressure drop to me says there is some sort of issue.
And obviously if you're using latex tubes, then they are slightly porous, so air does leach out of over those. But for like a commuting thing where you don't want to be pumping up your tyres every day, butyl tubes would be the best sort of option if that's a big thing for you. And they shouldn't be like dropping by that much.
I'm going to guess there's a valve core issue here.
But also 110 psi.
25s though.
That's a lot. No, but even for a 25, best bit of advice I can give you is go on the Silca tyre pressure calculator that we've mentioned already in this week's Tech Clinic. Anyway.
There you go. Hope that answered your questions. Stay tuned for another GCN Tech Clinic next week. Thanks for watching, as always. And don't forget to send your questions to askgcntech using the hashtag.
Yeah, love you. Bye.